hear this very often where people say, oh, but she's so beautiful, why is she still single? Or, oh, she's so beautiful, why is she not confident? Oh, or he's this and that, and why is he not this and that? So welcome to our very first episode of Empowered at Midlife. And my name is Shamala Tan, and I'm a spiritual teacher and toxic relationship therapist. And I'm here to share about any subjects that we like as one would experience at midlife. And my co-host is Alina.
Yeah, thank you. So, hi, I'm Alina Anderson. I'm actually over in Australia on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, and I'm actually a personal fitness trainer and author as well. Just sharing our struggles, but also, just trying to share some of our, I suppose, our own experiences, on how we navigate through the midlife sort of area. So hopefully our talks will be able to help other people as well go through theirs, and then sharing our experiences, because our aim is to help others.
I forgot to mention I'm from Singapore. I'm based in Singapore. Yeah. So, I think our purpose for this podcast is to really empower men or women. And I guess since both of us are women, we are targeting more women, but, men are welcome to listen in because there will be topics that would be quite general and is relatable to people, 40 and above. And so I think one of the questions that we initially talked about, right, Alina, was navigating through unknown waters. Right? That's a big topic and no one is really talking about it much. So maybe you want to start us off with this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's such a big subject, as you know, and we'll only just touch base on just a smidgen of not only what we go through, but what, general people, that I come across that go through as well. And I think there's not enough of it talked about. So hence our discussions and our reasons why for doing this in the first place is that I think people just want to feel connected to others, knowing that they're going through the same experience. And, I know for myself, as we were younger, we're getting brought up and conditioned to think that one day we'll get married, we'll have children, we'll have, we'll build our family, and our pathway is sort of like determined, for us. It's sort of like, allow, obviously, that might not always go according to plan, but we've got a bit of a direction. And, when we kind of hit that and our children grow up, our circumstances have changed, for a lot of the time to what we first thought it would be, whether it be through divorce or lots of different influences. In my case, it was, divorce, and all the things I spoke about when I was bringing up my children when they were younger. It's totally different now. To where I thought I would be. And you don't have that same direction, it's just so unclear and a little bit murky. And, you do feel really isolated at times, because you just don't have that same, that same type of energy, and that you just question yourself so much because it's so unclear and you really don't know and, what's going on.
Yeah. And I think also each of our experiences are so unique. I mean, no one has similar experiences in that sense, right? So it's difficult to even talk about it with people because the feeling you get inside is, oh, no one is going to understand my situation, right? And so you feel shy even about sharing. And I think feeling lost and navigating through the process, it just makes the load a lot heavier if you feel alone. How old were your kids when you divorced?
They were 9 and 7 at the time. Yeah.
Okay. I think my daughter would have been about the same age as well when I divorced. I think she was about 10 maybe. Or 9, 9 or 10 when I divorced as well. So it's just you feel like everything that you imagine that your life would be like in the future, in decades to come, it's like the whole thing just completely disappears, right? The vision, the idea of happy family, the idea of, having a spouse with you, all that, it's just gone. And to rebuild that, it's pretty challenging.
Oh,
Yeah.
it is. And you know, obviously on the circumstances, you know, for the split or for whatever the case may be, it's different. And, you know, there's obviously people out there that, you know, initiate the split, and there's people out there who don't. So, but just generally speaking, sometimes you can kind of feel a little bit ashamed and embarrassed because you feel like a failure. And we all know that it's not our own fault. It's not because, you know, we're set to do that. It's just the way that we feel ourselves. And I don't know, it's just really, you know, you're dealing through your different emotions and you're working through lots of different things yourself. And I think the best thing I found, you know, going through it was just I wanted to work through whatever it was that I needed to work through, just because I didn't want it to tap on my shoulder later on and to come up, you know, and have things that I've not dealt with, because I'd rather get the hard work done there and then so I can move on with life and, you know, meet someone for all the right reasons, not because it feels good at the time to have someone there to make me feel better. I mean, it was really nice to have, but you know, I knew deep down that's not what I wanted personally. And it was hard. I mean, I wanted all the happy family and that again, definitely. But it's changed, and it still changes.
Yeah, definitely. Did you, when you were going through all those changes, right after divorce, did you feel like inner paralysis?
I felt everything.
Yeah.
Every emotion, you know, and I'm thankful for the fact that the internet was around, but not like how it is now. So everything that I was able to go through, I just did internally, I wasn't sort of like sidetracked onto social media or distracted, I should say, because, you know, many times through the night I'd have to put on like a meditation tape, just something that, you know, was a guide, something that I could listen to help distract those thoughts, you know, around the 2 a.m. And it was really, really difficult, but I was just determined just to try and make it through just step by step. And someone told me a long, long time ago was that on those down days, don't make decisions. Just sit with those days.
Yeah, that is really wise. And I think we all have made that mistake of making decisions during our down days. And I think the other way around, making decisions when you have high days are also not, I don't think it's very wise either, because you may be feeling high at that point in time, feeling happy, but I think the mindset may not necessarily be clear because we are so influenced by the high or the low for that matter. So yeah, and I always tell my clients this, right? When you want to make an important decision, don't make it when you're feeling high or low. You know, when you are even-minded, when you are clear mentally, that's the best time.
Definitely. And how did so your daughter was 10
Yeah.
when you went through divorce. So how did you navigate through your divorce? Like, what were some of the tools or some of the strategies you used to get through that?
Okay. Well, my situation was very interesting. I think, you know, through the whole journey, right up to the point when, you know, with divorce, I kind of lost touch with so many people. So I was basically alone, right? There was no network for me to rely on. There were no friends I had new friends, but not friends who knew me for a while. So it was difficult. I mean, with new friends, you're not going to pour your heart out and tell them your problems, right? So I went to therapy, right? So, well, I did start therapy when I was much younger, but then I picked it up again during the separation and divorce stage. So therapy really, really helped. It helped me to get a better sense of who I am and where I'm going and how am I going to recreate my life, right? And so, but I still feel, you know, I could have done, you know, at the back of my mind that because there is this sense of maybe paralysis as well. There were many things that I could have done better, you know, thinking back, and many things that I could have maybe even helped my daughter even more at that point. But, you know, what's done's done. It's over. And no point thinking about, you know, what should have, could have. But I think for me, the inner paralysis was very real. It kept me in a space. And, obviously when you go through that stage, on hindsight, when I think about it, is borderline depression, right? When you are paralyzed, you're not sure which direction. And so I think I spent more than a year just cruising life, not really doing anything in terms of my work. I'm not focusing on that. I'm just cruising. Nothing really motivated me for a year, and maybe it would have been better if I had something to look forward to. But on hindsight, maybe the cruising was important for me, like just to take a break from things. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
the biggest thing is not to put that, I think, that expectation, on yourself. That's the biggest one, because, I remember a long time ago, someone said to me, come on, Alina, you should be over this by now. And I thought, and I know they meant really well.
Yeah.
They were trying to help, but I didn't take it that way. And I thought, oh, it's fine for you. I'm sure if the shoe was on the other foot, it would be different. And that was probably said about 12 months later. And I actually, as you mentioned, like therapy, I went to, I had therapy there as well, just to help me. And she was amazing, because the first thing that she said to me after our very first session was, Alina, what I hear from you at the moment is, I can't believe this is happening to me. And I said, well, yeah, because it was such a shock. I said, I can't believe this is happening to me. I've done everything right. I didn't even know there was anything wrong in the marriage,
Yeah.
And so I was still like, I can't believe this is still happening. It just completely floored me. So she said, so what I want you to do is, every time you hear yourself say that, I want you then to turn around and say, it is happening and I'm coping with it. And I went, oh, I like this lady, because it enabled me to confront some of the things that I was telling myself, but then how to navigate through it and what to do, some sort of, direction, because, it is really difficult. And I think, and I said to her about, the comment about, come on, Lena, you should be over this by now. She said to me that there was, a lady that, she was helping through her therapy, and she lost a little boy, and he was only 5 years old. And for reasons I'm not sure, but she just grieved and grieved. And, her friends, she used to put like a notice in the paper, just like a memorial sort of thing each year. And she'd go to his graveside each year. And, her friends, were well-meaning, and they said, come on, I think it's about time, that we can sort of start to put this aside. And she said, grief doesn't have a time frame.
Yeah.
There's no set time for grief. What is good for one person is good for another. The fact is that it's just still actively working through it.
Yeah.
And I know what I didn't want was to be the person that was still crying over something that happened years ago that I hadn't been able to deal with it, because I met quite a few of those people, and I thought, my heart is so broken, but I can see that you've still got so much resentment and anger and all those things that, that you're still carrying with you, which is just so destroying, And I thought, I don't care how long it's going to take. I just didn't want to be that person. And that's when the therapist said to me, like, it's really important that you go through that process.
Yeah.
So don't ever think that there's a time frame. I thought that was really good advice.
Yeah, it is good advice. And, someone once told me this, when you're going through something and you're sharing with someone else, it could be a friend, and if they tell you, oh, you should get over it by now, what is happening in that dynamics is that this friend or this person who's listening to you cannot hold the grief or the pain you're going through, and they just want to disperse it, right? And they say, oh, get over it, because their heart is not open wide enough. They don't have the mind space or emotional capacity to help carry you and to hold that space with you. And that's why they want you to, like, get it over and done with, don't be in my space with your stuff. And that's what's exactly what's happening, right? So it's so important, right? Who we choose to share our, our pain, our grief with, because not everyone is able to share the load with you. And I mean, not that they're bad people. I mean, they have their own stuff going on in their lives as well. And that, we've all have that friend, right? Who every time we see them, we go for a meal with them, they'll be talking about their problems. And then it doesn't get resolved, right? And then we meet them again a week later or 2 weeks later, we have a meal with them to talk about the same problem again. So sometimes I think to myself, I don't want to be that person that my friends want to avoid because I keep talking about my problems. So I should seek professional help, right? And I think that's, to be kind to people who are going through stuff is so important, and not tell them that they should get over it. And you're right, there's no time frame, in processing grief, any kind of grief. And I think at midlife, the other type of grief that we go through is also grieving for the aging process, right? Brings up another thing, right? Where we grieve for loss of the self. There's a different identity, a different body, a different, that's another type of grief. And if we're not aware of it, I think a lot of people go through some form of depressive feelings, right? I think some start as young as 40, some much older. And, this is definitely a conversation that we need to have as well. Sometime, in future episodes, or do you have some insights you want to share on this, Alina?
Oh, definitely. I think that, obviously in my industry, being a personal trainer, and that's, it's not always having the perfect body, but it's how you feel and how you move, and, how you function, how you feel, then how you look. And it's, it's a cycle. When you start to, you start to move, you start to instinctively make better eating choices, for instance, and then that starts to make you feel better. But you can't explain, or you can't give that person that feeling until they've gone through the steps. It's like you can't see what the view is like at the top of the steps until you take one by one.
Yeah.
So, and it's not a long process, but what happens is that if you've got your expectations are too high, that's when you've got disappointment. It's learning to, love your body. And I'm about function and movement and mobility now. Like the things that I used to be able to do 20 years ago, there's no way I could do that now, but I'm okay with that because, I'm still moving and I'm still exercising. I still get told I look great for my age, but I think, which is great. But the key to it, I always sort of say, is just keep moving, having a great positive mindset, surround yourself around, like a positive environment, because that's a big factor, as well. If you've got someone who's always negative in your corner all the time, they will never, they'll keep pulling you down. And that's another topic. That was where your expertise would come in. But, just moving and just keep things simple, because, and not to have that expectation of we all want that body at 20. And I mean, I've had 2 babies, my body, I love my body, it works, it functions. I meet a lot of people who have had a lot of problems with their bodies and moving, and it's just movement is medicine in that way.
That is so true. I think too many women have this. It's just looking at social media, right? You can see they have this unreasonable expectations of how they should look when if you're 40 or you're 50 or 60 for that matter, you can't expect your body to be the same as someone who is 20. And people go to lengths, right, to do very, very drastic changes to their being, or they do very drastic things just to keep up. And I think the pressure of that is really unhealthy in the long term, right? And we can't compare, right? I mean, if you're in a 50-year-old body, you can't compare yourself with someone in a 20-year-old body. It's just entirely different mechanics altogether, right? With the hormones and even life experience, the mindset, the emotional maturity. And that should be a school, right, that teaches people how to enter midlife beautifully.
Oh, yeah. Acceptance.
Acceptance. I think acceptance is a big part. It's
And I
really,
think
really.
being comfortable, it's easier said than done, being comfortable with, who you are. And that's, like what we were, we can share with people, what even like what I talked about, how do we need to make, this perfect, like a perfect crop or this or that. You said, no, let's just be authentic. Let's just be real. And, I loved that because it helps remove that pressure from other people having to feel like things need to be perfect or box ticked or whatever it is, because it's a lot of effort to do that. But that's not reality. So the reality is this is what we're doing. That's like, going back to when we were mothers, young mothers, our babies cried. Yes, we had a dirty house. But then, to put on that face like, oh, no, we're coping and, and it's different because, we might be coping on to the outside world, but the inside reality is totally different. And I remember my mother's group, I turned to the lady and, we both sort of said, oh, my God, are you doing that? They went, no. I went, oh, thank God. It's so nice to know that, we weren't, like some, lady of the house that had everything all immaculate and right down from, to what she wore to how the baby was dressed. It just removes those, those obstacles, and it was reality and it's relatable because, we all go through the same struggles. It's how we cover them, I suppose, because I think the more real that we can be, the more comfortable and connected people will feel as well, because they go through the same things. It's just how they cover it up.
Exactly. And I think because there's so much pressure from society, women don't talk about their struggles for fear of being judged, and they compare themselves with other people's experiences or what they see on social media and think that they're not the same as someone else, or they're struggling more than their friends because their friends have done such a good job on social media, right? And so there's a tendency not to talk so much about their struggles, and I think, for us, on this podcast, we really want to, bear all and share about the real struggles that people go through, and that it is, this is real life, we're not, we're not putting, we're not creating a movie where all the fakeness about, how to cover things up about what's really going on in our lives. I mean, I think we've had enough of that, for the past decade, especially. There's so much of fakeness on social media. It's time, that we do some real stuff. So for listeners, if you want some real authentic stories, you want some advice in inverted commas, or guidance, and maybe learn from our experiences, then stick with us. This is just our first episode.
Because obviously, we've got a lot to share, individually, and we're similar but yet so different but also we've got many years of experience of, coaching, our own industries as well, and all the people that we come across. And, so we've got a lot of things that we can draw on, and, like, obviously what we say is not always right. It's just how we feel, and by all means, it's only just as a guidance. And the main thing is just to help people feel connected, because there's a lot of pressure on having to feel you need to perform or, meet certain criteria even before you get started. And for instance, in my 20s, I would wear designer clothes. I mean, that made me feel great. Loved it. I couldn't keep up with it, like, from a money point. But I love certain brands. It made me feel great. And I always still make always make an effort. Still how I dress when I go out, because it makes me feel good.
Yeah.
I always think now, just from the wisdom as you get a little bit older, I feel a bit more comfortable in my skin rather than feeling judged, because I would go, well, if you don't like it, don't look at it. But I would never have said that at 20.
Yeah. I think that's the confidence you get, right, at midlife.
You do, and you can't teach that. It's something that's just kind of like accumulated over certain challenges that that you overcome, and that you're up against just in general life. But it's part of the growing as well. It's I think it's just the more that we can sort of be ourselves and be comfortable with, we can all still look great, we can all still make an effort, but we don't have to feel we need to meet certain things and have it perfected. And I know that I look back onto and I know it's different generations completely, but I know in my grandmother's times, when the majority of like women were at home looking after after a family.
Yeah.
And, the husband would come home and they'd get into the couch, and then, they would read the paper. And that was his transition time. Whereas now our transition time is that both parties are generally working, and the transition time from coming home to the work life is, a couple of glasses of wine. Little things like that. So there's completely different lifestyle changes there now. But what's happening is that same expectation is still there. And where both people are working, but yet both still feel like they need to, particularly the women still need to feel that they need to do full-time work and look after a house and look after children and all the responsibilities that go with it. And it's hard because it started off with some women who were very capable of doing it. Then all of a sudden, if other women that if they weren't meeting that criteria, they felt like that they were failing. And so then they sort of pushed up, and then oh yes, I can do this too. And then all of a sudden the rest of the women were like that. And like each to their own. It's nothing to do with about personal achievement. It's just that expectation. And it's just removing that expectation to feel like, well, if you want to achieve, that's great, but don't feel that you feel pressured to do that, because it makes it harder for the other women. And that's where I like, with all the females that I would train, I mean, I do train a lot of males, but I'm just talking with females, I try and be as real as can be, because, they look to me, for guidance, and support. And if I'm this, perfect body with this perfect face and perfect everything, I'm not really relatable. All I'm doing is just feeling like I'm sort of setting another expectation for the woman to follow. And if someone doesn't have all those, if they're not born genetically beautiful, or
exactly.
But I've also trained those women too, who everyone else thinks that they're genetically beautiful, but I can tell you there's always something there that they want to work on, because that's when I get called. And it helped me understand women. It doesn't matter, you might think they've got it all together, but they don't. It's the perception that they give off. So it's just trying to remove that pressure, and it's okay, like just to embrace, and just to not do that to ourselves any more than we need to.
I think we hear this very often, where people say, oh, but she's so beautiful, why is she still single? Or, oh, she's so beautiful, why is she not confident? Oh, she's or he's this and that, and why is he not this and that, right? There is an expectation that if you are like this, you will meet this criteria, right? If you are beautiful, you will have a boyfriend. If you're beautiful, you are in a relationship. And that is really unnecessary pressure. And where did people get all of these ideas from? And I think, very much to do with all the fairy tale books that we read as kids, right? Where it's happily ever after. If you are a beautiful princess, you meet your Prince Charming. And we have all been so brainwashed, right? With that idea that when you are this, you are that, and you have to be perfect. And I was reading this news article also about this woman. She's a very successful businesswoman, and she's got 7 kids. And so the way the article was written is like, oh, she's so successful and she's taking care of 7 kids. But I guess they're not mentioning that she has help. She has nannies to look after her kids, right? I mean, it's an impossible task, right? A successful businesswoman with 7 kids. Like, how is that even? We only have 24 hours in a day. There is no way, right? Unless you have help. And that's the reality that people don't talk about. And there is, there's so much of, it's being glamorized, right? That role that women should be able to do it all,
Definitely. But, and I think, and I know that I remember with my mother's group, just talking about all the different struggles. And I think I never actually really came across anything like that before until I became a mother in the mothers group, because I was, just by myself, do my own things until I had a family. And then, having that mothers group and that weekly sort of meeting and just turning to other mothers that were going through the same experience. I'd never met these mothers before, but it was like, oh my God, thank God I'm not the only one. And I've just never forgotten that relief, because just someone else that you can connect to that is going through the same things. And it doesn't mean they've got all the answers, but it's just like it made you feel that, you weren't failing, or, that, like, I remember when the baby, first, it was my first baby, and just crying in the middle of the night, and for lots of different reasons, and because I was a newborn baby as well, but just trying to have the pressure on, like, I should know the answer. I'm really good with kids. I should know the answer, and those sorts of things. And I felt like I was the only parent in the world who was up with a baby
Oh,
at 3 a.m., not being able to, soothe this baby or find out why it's crying, all those sorts of things. And I remember feeling the same thing when I went through my very early days of divorce. Why am I, while everyone else is sleeping, getting on with their everyday life and, having their dreams and everything, why am I the only one at 2 a.m. crying my heart out? And, until you meet someone else who's going through the same thing, and just that exchange of like relief, knowing that you're not the only one. And I think, that's really important. The more real we can be about something, like share those flaws, because they're not a flaw, they're just struggles that we all go through that's not spoken about.
Yeah, it's interesting that you share about your mother's group, because I had the exact opposite experience.
Ah,
I was in a mother's group, and because I'm a much older mom, right? I gave birth to my daughter at 36. And so in the mothers group, most mothers were in their 20s, and they were not working. They were, they had, like the husbands are supporting the family and all of that. But I was the main breadwinner in in my family at that time, and then having a baby. So when I went into that mother's group, I felt even more alone, which was, I thought that I could get support, right, from other mothers. And then I realized that, okay, not only are they 10 years younger than me, they're not working. And some of them even had help, even when they're not working. And that was after, I think I went maybe 2 meetings, and then, I thought, okay, this is not right for me. It's not good for my mental health. It made things worse for me. There was nothing relatable that I could talk about with the group. And and I just backed out of it, which was very interesting. Going in looking for support, but not getting, I suppose I joined the wrong group, or got in touch with the wrong group. And then things just got too busy trying to juggle, right, the working and the looking after the baby. But ultimately, I had support from my sister. She would help me out, looking after the baby, because I was working from home, and then she would come in the mornings to look after the baby and, wash the baby, feed the baby, and while I work, and then she would leave, in the afternoon, and then I take over looking after the baby after that. So it worked out, and so I basically learned from my sister, because she has 2 kids, right? So she kind of knew like what to do and all of that, and gave whatever advice she could at that point in time. So that helped a lot. Yeah.
Definitely. And it's good that you listened to yourself as well, because you knew, like, after a couple of sessions that you're not meant to be there. It wasn't for you. And if anything, like, mental health is such a big thing, as you know, and but also, can you imagine, just it could have worked the opposite too, instead of making you feel better each time that you met, because your situation was different. If you'd been in a group that were like-minded, not a problem. It's just that the circumstances were different. And even I remember having my second child, because I'd still I'm still in contact with some of those mothers group today.
Wow.
And and they've moved on, and some of them have become grandmothers now. And yeah, it's interesting, but that comes from because it's a small community based. It wasn't a city based town, but some of those mothers groups that with I forgot what I was when we came to the second child, I was the first one to have the second child. And I mean, they weren't far behind, but 6 months in a baby, like from newborn to a baby, it's like, from a tiny little thing to Goliath. It was totally different. So, and I felt really alone again because the other girls, some of them were, yes, there were second babies coming along, but I had no one to speak to who was in the same position, even though we'd had a friendship. They weren't up against I mean, I like to be organised as well, and I would, I breastfed both of my babies, and I remember getting everything organised, and then I'd sit down and feed my second baby, and then, my toddler would then go, "Mummy, I'm hungry," and I went, "Oh, damn, I forgot to get something to eat." So I got everything else all done, but then I forgot to give, her snacks or whatever it is at the time, and just trying to juggle. So I was really thankful for that. I did have that support, that network at the start, but I did experience it the second time. With the second one, I had a bit of trouble. I mean, I had trouble with both of them, but that expectation of because I breastfed both of the babies, and I had a lot of trouble with because my second child fed every 2 hours, not during the night, thank God. And I thought, oh, great, I breastfed, my nipples would all be all nice and finely tuned. But no, it wasn't. I was having a lot of trouble. And I remember the midwife saying, "No, Lena, it's just because you breastfed doesn't mean that they've toughened up. Just every baby has a different sucking position." I went, okay. But what I was able to acquire through that was at least I had some settling tools that I could use, that it was still like a brand new baby, that it was like the first time baby all over again. But at least I had a little bit of some sort of settling tools that I could use. If something doesn't work, I could use this. And that's kind of how I navigated through those first, say, 6 months or so. And then when the mothers came and had their second babies, like, it just seemed like such a long time ago I was in that position because I'd moved on. But I felt really isolated. And that was only just through having a second baby. Just not being around someone who I can experience the same problems with.
Yeah. And I think this sense of isolation, it's a funny thing, isn't it? When we experience isolation, I mean, intellectually, we know that it would be important to make connection or to get help. But that's the thing with isolation. It makes us feel like we cannot reach out, even though the person could be very near us, emotionally near us, but we just can't reach out. This, it's like we're trapped in this invisible cage. Isolation makes us feel that way, and we feel emotionally disconnected. And I think and I think that's how it leads to depressive feelings, and then of course postpartum, and when people go through that whole process, they feel entirely alone and no one understands them. There's this trap that we get ourselves in, right? The isolation, and we experience that in midlife too.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say that it's the same type of feeling, just different circumstances bring it about. And it's hard because we all like to feel like we want it together. And I always know that also the down days are the growing ones as well. And we've all had a fair share of those. But it's I think not to put that expectation on, like, and particularly like as we move forward, our circumstances are so different because our families have grown up now, and we're still trying to identify. I know I'm a mother, and I know that will never change, but there's such a big transition. And both of my children, the last one left home over 5 years ago. So it's not like they've just up and left. It's and they get on with their life, and I've got a great relationship, with both of them. and they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing,
Yeah.
just enjoying their life, exploring, and, I'm really close with them. But it's hard because I feel so not useless, that's not the word. It's like I'm at my best when I'm looking after them. And it's just learning how to do that again, but in a different way.
Yeah.
And
A different focus.
yeah, it's like we all want to, like, for 20 something years, we're always in a routine of, like, even when you're down at the shops, oh, hang on, I'll get that because I know such and such will need it, or, and we're just so inground, to think along those lines. We're in such a routine. Then all of a sudden it goes and you think, oh yeah, great, but it's not quite the same as what you thought it would be.
Yeah.
Because you're reteaching different routines again. And like, you don't want to be in your kids' lives where you're smothering them all the time by any means, and mine are definitely living their lives. But, at the same time, like, I would love just to have that family connection like when they were younger as well. But it just takes on a different role, and it's trying to find a fit, but not put that pressure on, that same expectation of what you think it should be like.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when my daughter, when she left for the UK for university, and then I went grocery shopping, right? So you're in this habit where you buy things and you go like, okay, she would need this, she would need that. And I remember going in and say, oh, I should get this soba noodles because she likes noodles. And then I realized, oh, she's not around. These kind of habits, right? They stay with you and then you need to find new habits. You need to buy different things, right? You stock up your kitchen really differently, when the kids are not around.
And I think also, coming to the, like the topic about just trying to navigate through those uncharted waters is this time around, we know not to put that expectation of what we think life should be like. It's nice to be comfortable financially, or it's nice to have, security, those sorts of things. But, define security, define, financial status. Like, everyone's got their own different interpretations of things, but it's what feels comfortable for you. And mine's always that I've always wanted to have the ability to have a choice. And, it doesn't matter if I rent or own my own home. Owning my own home used to represent security, but I actually rent at the moment, and I've not rented since, I was, married. It's been a big adjustment, but I'm also able to see all the positive side of things. It's like, okay, if I go into owning my own home, yes, it's security. What happens if something happens and if I need to sell it quick? Those sorts of things. And, I've been in that situation before, whereas at least with renting, you've got a little bit more freedom and flexibility. But I suppose my point is that I would never have thought of all the, the positive sides of, say, renting, because I was too fixed on having security because it was something I didn't have as a child. And so I've learnt and grown through that to see, there's actually quite a few positives, more than what I thought. And I'm not ashamed, and I'm not embarrassed, because, like the pressure, why do that to yourself now? It's hard enough trying to meet rent, let alone, have this house, and this for what? Like, yes, for security, but my ideals of life have changed now to compared to Well, I mean, if someone offered a house, I'm like, yeah, okay, great. I know I don't have to move. But just my intentions now are different. And I just, you don't put that pressure on. And I think the uncharted waters it's a difficult one, because we can all say, oh, we'll be okay. But, you've got to face reality as well. Is it, okay, are you making things, are you putting things in place to make sure you are going to be okay? And you can't just go, oh, I know it's all okay and everything's all, your head is buried. I'm not saying that. It's just learning to know not to put so much pressure on yourself. And
and I think making adjustments, right, to plans. I hear people talking about, their plans, what plans they have upon retirement, or what plans they have, moving forward. And plans do change, that's life. If plans don't change, then we are not humans, we are robots. We're just following a certain programming, right? And we function the way that we were supposed to function through the program. But life happens, right? And so flexibility, acceptance, I think these are two very important things that as we transition, right, from our 40s, 50s and onwards, we need to have that flexibility and acceptance. I think it makes life a lot more enjoyable and easier, less pressure. We don't need that unnecessary pressure, not at midlife.
No. And, I'm sure you would agree. Like, I actually love being this age because I know what I don't want. And I'm not frightened to speak up, like from years ago, for a long time, I was actually quite shy until you got, to know me. Like, just once you engage in a conversation, I wouldn't shut up, but to get to know me in that process. And I think motherhood brought that out because I had to learn how to, liaise with people. And I usually work with people generally from a long time, but, I learned and grew as, to the point now where I don't worry about, the same type of things I used to worry about when I was 20, but that just comes with living. So whereas now you've got the wisdom and you've got the maturity, and I sort of see it as a second time round.
Yeah.
But this time you've got a little bit more say of what you want to do. Yes, it's uncharted waters, but it's also you've got a little bit of wisdom behind you, and you're not scared, whereas when you were younger you're still trying to find out who you are and what you're doing. And I mean, that's still a process in its way, but you're still developing your tastes and you're not sure because there's so much to explore. Whereas now I sort of see it, we're in a really sort of strong advantage point because I always say I work out what I don't want, then go from there.
Yeah. And I think people sometimes forget that as you go through life's challenges and life's lessons, you become a different person, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes I have people telling me, oh, Shamala, you are, you're such a confident person. But that confidence is not something I'm born with. The confidence is built upon, right? It's one challenge after another, and and then you just get stronger and stronger and stronger. So you learn from it. And there's so much wisdom from life's challenges, isn't it? And if we know how to use it, we know how to milk it, and we will be much more empowered rather than feeling like a victim in situations. If you feel like a victim, then you'll never learn, you'll never become strong, you'll never have the confidence that you wish that you have. And so confidence, wisdom, all of these, they got to be milked, and we don't become the way we are. I mean, we're not born with it, right? A lot of it is we grow up as children, depending on how you are. Like, I'm an introvert, but when you go through life's difficulties and challenges in childhood and teenage years and all of that, all the trauma, right, that you experience, but what do you do with it? When you become a grown-up, when you become an adult, are you going to learn from, are you going to, do something about the trauma that you experience? And it is through those trauma that you become strong.
Definitely.
Yeah. And so, at midlife, we did not become the way we are just by cruising.
Because you teach that too to other people, don't you? With the line of work. And tell me a little bit more about that. Like, how do you, obviously you've been doing it a long time, so people come to you, and how do you help them, and like how do you navigate them through those times?
Yeah, well, I think the value of what I give in my work really coincides with my own growth, isn't it? Like, I can only see that much or give that much at the level I am at. And so if, I started this work when I was in my 30s, and in my 30s, yes, I've been through a lot. I went through so much, traumatic experiences, but it's still, looking back, right? I would say to myself, oh, wow, I never saw that, or I'm at a different space where my ability to see where my client is and what they're experiencing has sharpened by a lot. And that comes with experience. That comes with experience of working through my own stuff, right? And so when I help my clients, when they're in the, therapy room with me, and when they share something, my ability to pick it up becomes so much faster. And I'm able to take them from point one to whatever journey that we're going through, right? In their struggles. There is a certain level of clarity, I would say. The path becomes clearer for me in how I can, help them in that process. Helping them to get in touch with their emotions. I think that's one of the key things that I do in my therapy work, because our emotions are stuck in the body, right? And and you would know this as a fitness trainer, how certain movements, right? We're locked in certain movements. It shows us that certain emotions or certain energies are locked in that part of the body. And so when I journey with my clients, is getting them to feel and get in touch with those emotions. And then, after that, being able to then transmute it. But it takes time. This journey of growth and healing, it takes time. Growth and healing doesn't just happen overnight, because, a big part of it is also because in our minds, we don't want to process those emotions. We don't want to experience the trauma. Right? I've had someone say to me, I don't want to look back. I want to just go forward. I said, but there's no way you can move forward without looking back. That's the thing, right? We have to go through, look back at all the traumatic stuff we experienced, and then unpack everything. Then we can move forward. Or else we'll just be carrying the same load. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And it takes time, as you know, and I think, having that expectation of like, how long should this take? It's learning to surrender and just going through the movements. And the more that you can surrender, like, say working with, someone like yourself, the more open that you are, the more, in my terms, coachable they become, because they're wanting to do it without having to put that expectation and pressure on themselves. And that's really hard. So and that's where, when you touched on the base about, life struggles and, being a victim, and that throws me back to at the very first start, when I would be talking to, a person, heart is just bleeding, and I would be talking to them about my problems, but I could still see 5 years later down the track, they've not moved past. And it's just that resentment and bitterness, and you can hear it in their voice and you can see it in their actions. And that's who I didn't want to become. And that's one of the reasons why, like my book that, that I wrote about turning life struggles into strengths, is that it's that whole perception of things, is that it's not what you see, but how you see it. We can all look at the same thing, through the same eyes, but we've got completely different perception, because it's how we see it. The object is still in front of us, that's not moving, but our interpretation of things are different, governed by our thoughts and our perception. So you can go through life, through challenges as either a victim, or you could choose to go, well, I'm not liking what I'm going through. And like, I'm just talking generally here, without getting into too specifics or too deep, just generally across the board. Because a lot of people don't know how to navigate through them. No. And so they stay stuck. Yeah. And not necessarily intending to be a victim, they just don't know what to do. Yeah. So in the book that I wrote, When Life Gives You Lemons, Squeeze Them Harder, I talk about all the turning life struggles into strengths. And it goes from obviously my own experience, but also my fitness experiences because you need to have a mindset. When you're in an ultra race and you're right down the bottom of, like a big mountainous, like run, for instance, and you look right up to the top, that you got to get there, and you're feeling already tired and fatigued, and you think, oh my God, I've still got a few hours ahead. You got a choice of two things: either you do it or you don't.
Mm.
But you got to find a way to get you through those sticking times when you just don't want to do it, but you thank yourself later on for pushing through. And it's developing all those different, mindset tools that life, throws at you to, you don't have to go through the same experience, but you can go through, your own experience, but through different tools that you can use to help you.
So our listeners, if you're interested in Alina's book, it's in the description box. The links are there, so go check it out. And I think that we have come to the end of our first episode, and we'll be talking more about being authentic, being empowered at midlife. If you want more information about either one of our work that we do, our social media links are all below in the description box as well. And I also have an ebook available on Kindle now. My ebook is Navigating Narcissistic Relationships. And so you can check that out as well. And so we will see you all again in our next episode. Alina, do you have anything you want to say or say bye?
Oh, no, I think it's great. I think it's, just it's exciting to share, different things. And obviously, people have their own experiences that I know that they'll be reaching out to us as well. And yeah, definitely, we're open, we're talking about our own experiences, but, we can also help others as well if they want to maybe open up or do anything like that, or share something themselves. Definitely, we're open to that as well, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. So we'll see you all in our next episode. Bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we did really well.